Hey guys, Gary Lucas here today, and today we're going to talk about making our first actual game. Now, I've already gone ahead and made it, so it'll be easier to explain to you guys. Um, but it's going to be a multi-part video, because we're going to go over each individual method. We have like a really cool class here, and it's a lot of stuff. Like each method is relatively large and a little confusing. Um, so I'm going to do my best to explain what it is, but here, I'm just going to show you what it does. So if we run this, you see it draws a little board like this. Now this number 7, actually I can get rid of that, but we'll talk about that later. But basically what this does is we have a monster and we have a player, and what it'll do is it'll ask you for either W, A, S, or D, and then you hit enter. So let's go up. So W, and now you see it's redrawn the board, and our character is now one space above where he was. And there is a win condition and a lose condition. The win condition is getting to the end, so let me just do that. Yeah, and it says I win. Okay. Now, then if we want to lose, we have to just touch the monster. And of course, the monster moves randomly around the board. There we go. See? And there we go. So let's learn how to make this. Alright, so we're going to start off by making a new Java project. In this case, I'm going to call it game. You could call it first game, whatever floats your boat. And then under source, we're going to create a new package. In this case, I'm going to do com.game. Now note, in typical practice for naming packages, most people do their web space. So you could do like com dot whatever your web space is named dot whatever. You can keep going. And typical like big companies will do that, but you could just name it whatever. In my case, I'm just gonna call it com.game. And it's actually good to have multiple folders. You'll see that as we go into more games after this, but right now we obviously don't need multiple folders. We're going to create a class, and we're going to call it main, and this is where our game is going to run. We could also call it game, and that would make sense, but I'm going to call it main. And I'm just going to add the public static void main thing here, so I don't have to type it. And here we go. So this is the beginning. Now we're going to need a lot of things to make our game do all of this stuff. But we don't need the main yet. So we're just going to close her off and put her down there. So we actually need a second class. So we're going to go into our game and we're going to create a new class. And we're going to call it character. Because we're going to need a class to handle our player and our monster. And we'll come back to that. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to draw the game board. So first we need to create a game board. So let's create a game board. So we need to create a multi-dimensional array. And if you don't know what any of this is, check the previous videos where we talk about programming basics. And to do that, and it's going to need a lot of modifiers. So it needs to be public because we're going to be accessing it in our character class. Why does it keep doing this? I don't understand. There we go. So it's going to be public. We need to make it static because we're going to be using it in the main method. And it's going to be a character because it's only going to print a single thing here. Now these other things we're going to handle in a second. And then it's going to be a multi-dimensional array, so let's name it battle board. Now, this tutorial is slightly based off of Derek Bana's tutorial, and I completely added way more functionality, because his is just a bunch of monsters running around attacking each other. Mine is a game that you actually play. So, yeah, so now we have our multi-dimensional array, and we're going to assign it a size. And the size we're going to assign it is 5 by 5. We could do bigger if we wanted to. I tested this out at 10 by 10 and whatnot. But for now, we can even do 3 by 3 if we wanted to. Let's do that. Let's do 3 by 3. Make the game smaller, more difficult. So, now we need to define a couple things before we move on. We need to define the max board space in the X position and the minimum, and the max Y and the minimum Y. The reason why we need to define this is because we're going to be having our characters move around. And if our characters are moving around, then we don't want them to move off of the array. Because if they try to do that, it'll actually give us a huge error and then nothing will work. So let's do that. So we're basically just going to create a couple ints. We do need to make these public because we will be accessing these. And they will be static. Int max x board space. Okay. And this one is going to be equal to battle board. And this is a cool thing you can do with arrays, is if we want to know the exact size of a specific part of the array, we can just do .length. That's really cool, and I actually, of course, typed this wrong. Battleboard.length, and we're going to do -1 because we want the length to be -1. So what this is doing is it's finding the X position, so this position, and it's going to the max number down here. Okay, so in this case it would be 3. And we're telling it that the max board space is 3 minus 1. The reason is it will tell us 3. But if we try to put that into our battle board array, that'll actually give us 1 more than we need. Because while there's 3 positions, if we type in 3, the position of the array would actually be 2. So if you remember back to arrays, it starts from position 0, then goes 1, 2, 3. So if we only have 3 positions, position 3 is actually labeled as 2, index 2. But it's going to give us back 3. So we need to put -1, so that way when we type it in, it'll actually come back as 2 for the index. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Probably doesn't, but you'll see why. Static int, and then we're going to do min x board space. Okay, and this is going to be a little different. It's going to be battleboard dot length, and then what I'm going to do is, you see up here we have 3 positions. Okay, so I'm going to actually do -3. Okay, so it's going to give us back 3, and the min position I'm now forcing to be index 0. Okay, so that way we can't go below 0, which would be this line, and we can't go above 3, which would be this line. Okay. Now, if we were changing the size, so let's say we were doing 5 by 5, which is what this is here, I would just change this to 5. This one's perfectly fine as it is. Okay, I'm actually just gonna copy these. You know what? Let's just keep it 5. I don't know. You could change it. Really doesn't matter. And I'm gonna call this max y board space and min y board space. Now, you would think that this would work, but it doesn't. We actually need to say that we want to go in the y position. So to do that, you just do this. And what it's going to do is, instead of calculating down this way, it's going to calculate down this way. All right? And it's the exact same numbers because it's the same size. So this is all going to be fine. Now, what else do we need to do? For now, this should be good. So now let's actually go, and we're going to need 2 methods. We're going to need a method called the build board and a method called draw board. Or you could do redraw board or whatever. To do that, we're going to create a public static void method called build board. Okay. And this one it's void because we're not returning a number. We're not returning a value of any sort. We just want it to run some code. So we're going to do what's called an enhanced for loop. Okay, so this is neat. I don't think we did this. It's really easy though. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to create a character that is an array called row, and we're going to have uh, the battle board assign each of its values to row. And this is what an enhanced for loop or a for each loop does. So what this is saying is for each row, or we could call this whatever, so for each character I, assign that to everything inside of Battleboard. Okay? So it's going to run through the entire multidimensional array of Battleboard and assign whatever value that we assign to row. Okay? So I'm going to call it row. So check this out. This is where it gets really cool. So we're gonna import a library from Java, and to do that, we just type in whatever we want from the library, and Java will automatically recognize that we don't have that library imported. So the library I want to import is arrays from the java.util library. Okay, and we could actually just go up here and import it ourselves. We could do import java.util and then do this. Okay, and we could do that. What does it want us to do? Remove unused info. Oh, it's because we're not actually using it yet. But yeah, so we could do that, or we could actually just use whatever function we want from it, and then it'll say, oh, you haven't imported that, and then we can just import it. So what this is going to do is we're going to fill Battleboard with row, and what we're going to do is we're going to say row has the value of this. Okay. Now it doesn't like that because we haven't imported the oh no, it imported the library for us automatically. That's good. So now we have our build Battleboard method, and what this is going to do is it's just going to create all these stars that we see here. It's not going to create the lines, but you'll see what we do with that. So we basically assigned all of the multidimensional array of Battleboard to this. Okay, that's all we've done. So now we're going to create a method called draw Battleboard, or you could do redraw Battleboard. It really doesn't matter. It's going to have the same kind of stuff as the build board, public static void, because it's not returning a value. We just want to run some code, and we're going to be using it inside of the main method, and public because we might use it somewhere else. Okay, we probably won't, so it probably doesn't actually need to be public. So let's just make it static void. And if we need to make it public later, we can. So this is going to be a little complicated. We'll call it draw board. So this might get a little complicated, but hopefully you follow along. So we're going to first create an int. We could name this int anything. I'm going to call it k. It's just going to hold the value 1. Why? Because I want to create these lines so we can differentiate between each board as we redraw it. Okay? So we're going to do a while loop because we're going to say while k is less than 30. And the reason I'm doing 30 is because this is roughly 30 long. We could probably do less. We could probably do, let's do 20. 20 seems okay. And so while k is less than 20, we're going to say system, because we're printing out to the console. This is just a console game. Print, okay, we're not going to do print line. And all we're going to do is we're going to say print this. That's all we want to do. Okay, and then we're going to say k++, because we want to increment k, so it only draws it 20 times. Then we're going to do system.out.println. The reason I'm doing that is because I just want it to move to the next line to draw the actual battle board. Okay, because that way we just have these lines here, and then we have the battle board. And then I'm going to copy all of this except for the int part. I'm going to put it right here. Okay, and this way it'll draw 2. So it'll draw this one and it'll draw this one. Okay, and I didn't grab the int, and the reason why we have k here is because after this loop goes, k will equal 19, right, or 20. So we have to reassign k to 1. Okay. So now we're going to create a for loop, and we're actually going to create a nested for loop because we want to draw the board. And to draw a board like this, we need to create a nested for loop because we need one for the x position and one for the y position. Okay, pretty simple. So for the first one, we're going to say int I equals 0. I is less than battle board. Did we capitalize it? Yeah, battle board dot length. Okay, and then I plus plus. I don't know why that's there. So I is equal to 0. Perfect. Okay. Then our second for loop is going to be a little different. It's going to be about the same, but just slightly different. So int j is equal to 0. As long as j is less than battle board dot length. J++, and we're actually going to go here and just change battle board here because we want it to run along the y-axis. Okay, and we're going to say inside of there I. Why are we saying I inside of here? The reason is because when we increment I, so for the beginning we want this one is going to put a place here, okay? And if we only had the first for loop, it would only just do one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. The second for loop is going to fill all of them, okay, going this way. So what we're going to do is the first for loop is going to say, hey, we're in this position. And then the second for loop is going to go, oh, and fill in the row. And then the first for loop is going to say, oh, now we're in the second position. And then the second for loop is going to keep going, and so on and so forth. Hopefully that makes sense. So to tell the second for loop that we're actually in a new position, we're going to say battle board with I. Because if you remember up here, by putting the 0 here, we're telling the program that we're in the y axis right now. Okay, that's all it's doing. And then we're going to say system.out.print because we want it to go consecutively right after each other. And we're going to create a line. So we're just going to put this symbol. Okay. We're going to do plus because we're going to add multiple things in a single line. Then we're going to say battle board, multidimensional, I and j. Okay. Plus, and then another line. Now what does this do? Well, first it's going to print off a line, just like we have here. And then it's going to print off this. So what is this? So this is going to get the position that we're at. So if we're at 0, and then this is at 0, it's going to give us this one. And we learned about this in arrays. So array positions are calculated like this. And if we're in 0, 1, it's going to go here. 0, 2 will be here. 0, 3, 0, 4. Okay? And that gives us 5 positions. So what it's going to do is it's going to figure out, because we're incrementing I and j every iteration of each loop, it's going to draw the entire board for us. So we can actually do this, but before we run it, I'm just going to go system.out.print line, because I want to create another space, and then we draw this. So now we can actually take a look to see how this worked. Okay, so first I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to say build board. Okay, so it's going to run the method build board. What doesn't it like about that? Okay, I spelled it wrong. I didn't add a D up here. Okay, perfect. There we go. And then we're going to do draw board. Okay, so now let's run this. Bam! So that's exactly what we just did. We just made it draw the board. So hopefully you guys like that video. And in the next video, we're going to go on and we're going to make it do more things. We're going to create the character class.